There comes a moment in life when you realize your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. When you're no longer there to answer every call, to fix every mess, to carry every burden. Suddenly, the silence becomes deafening for those who once took you for granted. And here's the truth no one likes to admit. Sometimes, people need to lose you to finally see your worth. But the real question is, why did it take them so long? One of the most painful realizations in life is this. The more you give without restraint, the more invisible you often become. It's a paradox that doesn't seem fair, because you think that love, loyalty, and service will naturally inspire gratitude. You think that if you just keep showing up, if you keep making sacrifices, the people around you will feel the weight of what you're doing. But over time, your extraordinary effort stops looking extraordinary. It just becomes expected. You've made it the norm. The danger in being endlessly generous is that it erases the perception of choice. They don't see that you are choosing to stay late, choosing to listen when you're exhausted, choosing to put their comfort before your own. They see it as simply who you are, as if it's some permanent feature of the environment, like the air in the room. And here's the thing about air, no one notices it until it's gone. When you are always there to soften the blow, to pick up the pieces, to absorb the frustration, you become the silent foundation holding everything together. And because you do it so consistently, people stop asking themselves how those problems would be solved if you weren't there. They stop imagining the chaos that would erupt in your absence, because to them, that absence feels impossible. This is where the resentment begins to grow in you. Quietly at first, because you realize you are working in the background of everyone's life while your own needs fade into the background of yours. You give more and more, and strangely, it doesn't create more appreciation. It erodes it. People are wired to adapt to comfort, to normalize stability, to treat the extraordinary as ordinary if it stays too long. And so, without ever meaning to, they stop thanking you. They stop acknowledging you. They just assume you'll always be there. It's a brutal truth, but human beings rarely grasp the full scope of what someone provides while that person is still within reach. It's almost as if the mind files away their contributions as permanent fixtures of life. And then one day the fixture is gone. That's when the picture changes entirely. Suddenly, they notice the little things. The quiet words of reassurance you offered when they doubted themselves, the invisible labor you did to keep things running smoothly, the moments when you absorbed their anger or anxiety so they could find their footing again. Those moments, which had blended into the fabric of daily life, now stand out in sharp relief. It's not always that people are malicious or ungrateful by nature. It's that familiarity is a powerful blinder. We stop consciously valuing what we don't fear losing. And then, when we lose it, it can feel like a hole has been punched in the center of our lives. The silence where your voice used to be becomes loud. The absence of your energy becomes heavy. And they begin to replay all the times they didn't say thank you. All the times they brushed aside what you offered. All the times they assumed you'd be there tomorrow. But by then, the dynamic has shifted. You're no longer the constant presence they can lean on without thought. You've stepped back, and in doing so, you force them to confront the truth they couldn't, or wouldn't see before. Your value was always there. It's just that they needed to lose access to it to finally feel it. And maybe, in that painful space, you realize something too. That your worth should never depend on someone else's sudden moment of clarity after you're gone. There's a trap that's so easy to fall into, and it's one that will eat away at you slowly. It's the trap of chasing someone's recognition, of bending yourself into shapes that you were never meant to take just to feel seen. At first, it feels noble, maybe even necessary. You tell yourself you're proving your value, showing your loyalty, demonstrating that you're worth their time, their care, their commitment. But over time, you start to realize something unsettling. The harder you work to be noticed, the less they actually see you. The more you push to earn appreciation, the more you train them to believe that your effort is simply the bare minimum. You've set the baseline so high that they no longer view it as a gift. It's just the standard they expect from you. This creates a dangerous cycle. You sense the lack of gratitude, so you double down, thinking that maybe if you just do more, If you're more accommodating, more patient, more forgiving, they'll finally appreciate you. And for a fleeting moment, maybe they do. But soon enough, it fades, and you're left exactly where you started, giving endlessly and still not feeling valued. What you're really doing is teaching them to take you for granted. And here's the thing, they might not even realize it's happening. People adapt to whatever you allow. If you show them that your energy, your time, and your sacrifices have no boundaries, they'll keep taking without ever considering the cost to you. The truth is, appreciation can't be forced into existence. It's not something you can manufacture by overextending yourself. It's something that has to arise naturally from the other person's recognition of your humanity, your effort, and your choice to give. And if they can't see that while you're right there in front of them, bending yourself into exhaustion won't make it happen. You end up erasing yourself to fit into a space that was never designed to respect you. And what you lose in the process is far greater than the gratitude you were hoping to gain. That's why boundaries become absolutely essential. People hear that word and they often think of confrontation, of shutting people out, of building walls. But boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about preservation. They're a way of communicating that your time, your energy, and your emotional labor have value. They're a declaration that you are not an endless resource to be tapped into whenever someone feels the need. And here's the hard part. When you first put those boundaries in place, people will notice, not because they were respecting them before, but because they've grown used to a version of you that didn't have any. When you stop saying yes to everything, when you stop fixing every problem the moment it appears, people are forced to face what life looks like without your constant intervention. And for some, that will be uncomfortable. They might accuse you of changing, of being distant, of caring less. But what's really happening is that you're giving them the opportunity to take responsibility for their own lives. You're removing the safety net they've mistaken for solid ground. And sometimes that's the only way they will ever learn to value what you provided, not as an entitlement, but as a privilege. Boundaries are not a rejection of others. They are an affirmation of yourself. They make space for relationships built on mutual respect, rather than silent exploitation. They ensure that when you give, it's not out of obligation or fear of being unloved, but from a place of choice and strength. And in that space, your worth is no longer something you have to chase. It's something that's recognized naturally by the people who truly deserve to be in your life. When you step away from situations where you've been undervalued, something remarkable happens, though it rarely feels that way at first. There's an initial emptiness, a kind of silence you're not used to. For so long, your identity has been bound up in solving problems, in being the steady presence others could lean on. You're used to being in motion, to carrying weight that no one else even sees. And then suddenly, you're not. That space can feel frightening because it forces you to confront a question you may have avoided for years. Who are you when you're not in service to everyone else? But it's in that space that the transformation begins. Without the constant demands, you start to hear your own thoughts again. You begin to notice the things you used to enjoy before exhaustion became your normal state. You remember hobbies, ideas, dreams that were pushed to the back of your mind because you were too busy managing the needs of others. Your energy, which for so long flowed outward without limit, begins to flow inward. You realize that you're not just the role you played in someone else's life. You're a whole person with your own desires, strengths, and boundaries. And while you're making these discoveries, something else is happening on the other side. The people who were accustomed to your constant presence now have to navigate without you. The comfort they once took for granted is gone, and in its absence, they're forced to reckon with how much of their stability depended on you. Some will resent it. Some will finally understand it. But either way, the dynamic has shifted, and you're no longer locked into the same cycle. This is why it's so important not to return too soon. That moment when someone reaches out and says, "I miss you," or "I didn't realize how much you did," can be intoxicating, because it's the recognition you longed for. But if you rush back before both you and they have truly processed the absence, you'll fall right back into the same patterns. Appreciation can be fleeting if it isn't accompanied by change. It's easy for people to promise they'll value you more, but words spoken in the discomfort of loss are often forgotten once the comfort returns. You have to allow the distance to do its work, not just for them, but for yourself. This is the time when you decide what you will and will not allow if you choose to re-engage. It's the time to be honest about how the relationship made you feel and what needs to be different going forward. And sometimes you'll come to the conclusion that it's better not to return at all, not out of spite, but out of a recognition that you've outgrown the place you left. There's a strange strength that comes from sitting with that discomfort, from not immediately filling the gap your absence created. It forces you to see that you're capable of living, and even thriving, without being indispensable to someone who didn't value you. It allows you to rebuild your life around reciprocity instead of sacrifice, around self-respect instead of approval. And when you do eventually step back into someone's life, if you choose to, it will be as an equal, not as an unacknowledged pillar holding up a structure that was never yours to bear alone. Pain has this way of revealing truths you didn't want to see. When you discover that someone only grasped your value after you were gone, it cuts deeply, not just because they failed to appreciate you, but because it forces you to confront all the moments you ignored your own needs in order to keep them satisfied. That sting can easily harden into resentment. You can replay the past over and over, thinking of all the times you should have walked away sooner, all the times you allowed the imbalance to continue because you hoped things would change. But if you stay there, if you dwell in that bitterness, you end up carrying their blindness like a weight on your back. There's another way to see it. The pain, as unwelcome as it is, can become a kind of fuel. It strips away the illusions you were clinging to. It shows you, without question, who was willing to honor you and who wasn't. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. That clarity can be the foundation for something stronger. Instead of bending yourself into smaller and smaller shapes to fit into someone else's life, you can begin to expand into your own. You can choose relationships where effort flows both ways, where love and respect are not rewards for enduring mistreatment, but the natural state of the connection. This is how you turn pain into power, not by pretending it didn't happen, not by burying it, but by letting it rewire your sense of what's acceptable. You stop settling for crumbs of acknowledgement. You stop negotiating against yourself. You start demanding reciprocity, not in a loud, aggressive way, but in the quiet, unwavering way of someone who knows they deserve it. And this shift changes everything. People who once relied on your silence to keep the dynamic in place now see that you're no longer willing to play that role. Some will fall away. Others will rise to meet you at this new standard. Both outcomes serve you. And from there, something even more profound can emerge. The decision to live in such a way that your presence is never overlooked again. That doesn't mean striving for constant recognition or chasing approval. It means inhabiting your life fully, without apology. You engage in the things that bring you joy. You speak when you have something to say. You assert yourself when boundaries are crossed. You stop dimming your light to make others more comfortable. This isn't about proving your worth. It's about living in it. When you do that, you stop existing in the shadows of other people's needs. You become a force in your own right. Your presence carries weight, not because you're demanding attention, but because you've built a life that radiates self-respect. And here's the irony. When you stop trying to be indispensable, when you stop centering your existence around earning someone else's appreciation, people tend to value you more. They sense that you're not there out of desperation or obligation, but because you choose to be. And choice, true deliberate choice, makes your presence infinitely more powerful. In the end, you realize that the real victory isn't in making someone regret underestimating you. It's in building a life so rich, so grounded in self-worth, that their past inability to see you no longer matters. They can remember you however they choose. But you, finally, are living in a way that ensures you never again disappear in plain sight. If this message hit home for you, it's time to stop apologizing for taking up space in your own life. Your worth doesn't begin when someone else notices it. It's there whether they see it or not. I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced someone realizing your value only after you were gone? Share your story in the comments. Let's make this a space where we learn from each other, where we grow together. If this speech spoke to you, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so we can keep building this conversation. And tell me, what topic should we tackle next? Your voice matters here.